Hey everybody, this is Jeremy Burrs from D5 Ranges Marengo, and today we're going to talk about something that is extremely important, and that's knowing how to use a tourniquet and knowing how to use it properly. Today we're going to talk about tourniquets and how to properly use tourniquets. Now I find that a lot of people carry tourniquets, and if you don't, you absolutely should, but do you really know how to use this tourniquet properly? Anytime you use a tourniquet, you have to make sure you're doing it right, because sometimes you can do more damage than you can do good. I am certified in the USCCA's Emergency First Aid Fundamentals, and it is a class that we teach here at D5 Ranges Marengo. We talk about anything from knife, gun wound triages, all the way to everything that you can think of from a medical standpoint of things, both in Emergency First Aid Fundamentals and Countering a Mass Shooter Threat, and those are classes that we teach here. Today I brought in some special guests, let's call them. On one side we're going to talk about how to administer this to another person, how to treat another victim, and on the other side we're going to talk to you about how to administer this to yourself. All right, so for this segment, I brought in some of our heavy hitters from Marengo Fire. So I've got firefighter medic and a firefighter EMT here to go over the segment on applying the tourniquet to somebody else. So what do you think are some really key things that we've got to talk about before we even think about applying that tourniquet to that person?
So before, you can always try, just putting pressure on the wound and kind of elevating it. So let's say Kirsten has a wound right here. We can try to, put direct pressure on it, maybe raise a little bit. And then from there, if it's still bleeding through, we know that we might have a more serious problem, which is when we would need the tourniquet.
Okay, so if we have that hypothetical wound on her arm, can you go ahead and apply that tourniquet?
Yeah.
Let's talk through kind of the things that we want to think about.
So yeah, we'll say Kirsten has a wound like right here. So you're gonna wanna un-Velcro it like so. And you'll notice when I pull this end, this kind of gets smaller. Or if you loosen it, it gets bigger. So that's what kind of controls the tightness as you're pulling it around their arm. And then this time part here, that's, if you have a pen, it's more important for us, especially as first responders. We'll write the time that we put the tourniquet on. That way, once they get to the hospital knows how long this tourniquet has been placed on.
So is there a time limit that we think about with a tourniquet? Can it be on indefinitely and it doesn't make a difference, or is there kind of a set time for something like that?
It's not something anybody would have to worry about.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it'll be fine for them to get to the hospital, but yeah, obviously the longer it's on, the more blood flow is lacking to that area. So, which to live, it needs that blood flowing. So, so yeah, that's why time's important. So it just lets the hospital know. But like I said, that's kind of more important for us because obviously we carry stuff where we can write that down with.
Right.
And then the next part is once it's on, this is what's going to tighten it around. So you're going to keep twisting this until you see that blood flow stop.
Okay.
So if I have it on her arm, so I'll go ahead and place that on now. So like I said, her wound's going to be about right here, so we want to go 2 to 3 inches above the wound.
Okay.
And then the first key is pulling this part right here, this little tail. It's really tight. You want it as tight as it can go around there because that's also going to help stop the initial bleed. And then we're going to Velcro it under like so. And then our next part is we're going to twist this until the bleeding stops. So if we twist it once and the bleeding stops, then once we do that, we can tuck it under here, and this will go right over like that, and that's when you would write your time.
Okay.
So you wanna, obviously it hurts when you put it on, so I don't wanna, hurt Kirsten too much, so I'm only gonna twist it once, but you're just gonna keep twisting this until that bleeding stops, and that's when you tuck it in under like that. So if it's still bleeding, keep twisting is the biggest thing.
So same thing, if we've got an upper extremity, we've got it here, we wanna be that 2 to 3 inches above that. And then when we're talking about a leg injury, lower injury to our body or extremity here, and we have an injury here, same thing, right? We wanna bring it up 2 to 3 inches above that injury.
Yep. Yeah, so if Kirsten has it like, let's say right here, or right above her knee, we're gonna bring it up about to her thigh area.
Okay.
Still 2 to 3 inches above.
Okay.
So if, let's say they have an injury like really like close up more towards their like thigh, groin area, you just wanna get it above it as much as you can, but you can still place it on top and just get it tight. Okay. Because obviously, we never know where someone could get injured or they're bleeding from. So if it is in a spot where we can't really get above. We'll just try to get above as much as we can, but end of the day, if we're trying to stop that bleed, you can just go right on top of it as well. So,
okay.
So
if we have no more room to go up, then
yeah, you can
get
put
on
it
there.
right on top. Yeah, as long it's the pressure that's helping it.
Okay.
So it's going to clamp off that blood flow.
Awesome. All right, well, thank you guys very much. I really appreciate you coming out here and showing our audience how to use these. I think it's a very important thing that people need to know how to do, and unfortunately not a lot of people really understand how to use these, and if you don't use them properly, they're probably not going to do you a lot of good, right? And you really have to make sure they're done right.
It's true, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like that theory, if you have your finger over the front of a hose, if it's not all the way, it's going to start spurting out possibly faster, so get that thing fully covered, get that blood supply shut off. Awesome. Well, thank you guys very much. I really appreciate you guys coming in here and showing us how to do it. So
thanks for having us.
So for my next special guest that I'm bringing in here is actually a really good friend of mine from the police department, and he is an officer that has what kind of certifications as far as this sort of stuff goes?
When this kind of first came in with Stop the Bleed, I've been certified in Rescue Task Force training. I've certified in individual trauma care, self-aid, buddy aid, all that totaling over 40 hours in training in this.
All right, cool. So we did get a subject matter expert, I guess, right?
Well,
Did we call you that? Yeah?
I don't know.
I'm calling you an expert.
Okay.
All right, sweet. So we're going to talk about applying a tourniquet to oneself, and I figured you were kind of the person that probably has to think more about applying a tourniquet to themselves than some of the other people would have to think about that, and that's very important for people on our side of things to think about, man, what happens if I get an injury that I'm going to need to use a tourniquet? Is there anything you can think of to talk about maybe before we actually try to put a tourniquet on you? Or you try to put a tourniquet?
Yeah, absolutely. Bleeding emergencies are the #1 preventable cause of death. They found that out in the Iraq and Afghanistan conflicts, and it's not just in situations where someone maybe sustained a gunshot wound or a knife wound or a criminal act. It can be car accidents, mass natural disasters, a workplace incident, repairing something. You're up in the gutters at your house, you fall off the ladder, fall onto something wrong or a branch or something like that. So it really is a broader spectrum than a lot of people think about it when the topic comes up.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So I'm just going to hand you a tourniquet if you want to talk about that for me.
Okay. So when we talk about tourniquets, we want to talk about placement. If it is going to be on your body or where it's going to be stored, you want to be aware of where it's at. You want to make sure it's set up in a manner, because these things come plastic wrap from the factory. You want to make sure you take that plastic wrap off, take a good inspection of it, get it set up to where it can be used for self-application, because you obviously don't want to be tearing open packages if you don't have the use of both limbs in order to do that. So what I want to do, take it out of the plastic wrap, make sure that I have a hole or set this to a size to where I can use this one-handed to place over my arm. So I'm going to open it up nice and big like that to where I can place it over my arm. I'm going to fold that back up, and then this plastic clip right here, the Velcro strap that goes over, is actually what locks the windlass into the plastic clip. I want to make sure that that's open, so I don't need to worry about trying to open that when I'm actually applying it to myself, because you're applying it to somebody else, you've got the use of two hands, you're probably thinking a little bit more straight. If you're the one that's injured and you've got all that adrenaline dump going and the vasoconstriction and maybe loss of some of the fine motor skills, you want to be able to make sure that you're set up as best as you possibly can to save your life, because that's what you're doing by using a tourniquet.
Right. Which kind of brings us into another good point, is time frame, right? I mean, realistically, we don't have a whole ton of time to apply this to ourselves, possibly in some of these situations. What do you think is a time frame that we have before we start thinking about not being able to apply this anymore to ourselves?
So definitely something to consider, 3 to 5 minutes.
Okay.
A death can occur in 3 to 5 minutes.
Wow, okay.
So if you hit a serious artery and you're really bleeding out, you want to get this tourniquet on as fast as possible. If you are in a situation in which somebody is attacking you, things like that, we tell people in those types of situations, you got to finish that situation first. You probably got about a minute to do that, but then you go straight for the life-saving measure, the tourniquet, and get that applied.
Yeah, we've got to survive the attack first and then get the ability to put on the life-saving measures at that point.
Absolutely.
All right, cool, man.
Okay. So self-application, if it's stored on you, somewhere you can reach it with both arms. If it's not stored on you, obviously that's a consideration with being able to get to it or not. Once you have it, let's just say that my left arm is out of commission at this point. I'm going to apply this. I'm I'm gonna get this opened up. I want the tip of the tourniquet. The cat tourniquet is great. I like the cat tourniquet best for self-application. I'm not endorsed by the company, but it is
I
number
agree,
one.
that's what I use.
So they generally have red tips or the tip of the strap. I want that coming to the center of my body because you can't take this arm and pull something across, especially if you got gear on and stuff like that. Even if you don't have gear, you're not going to get it to where you need it to be.
Right.
So I'm going to take that. That's going to come to the center of my body. And what that looks like when it's not Velcroed is something like that. So I'm putting this on my arm. There is guidance that says 2 to 3 inches above the wound. If you're doing this to yourself, you go as high and tight as you can.
Okay.
Think about it like plumbing. So your house is flooding. You want to find that shut off for the whole house so you don't have to worry about something else bursting and water coming from somewhere else. Go as high and as tight as you can on the appendage. And I'm taking out all the slack I possibly can and ripping that as tight as I possibly can around my arm. I'm going to go up just before that clip and I'm going to stop with the Velcro on the cat. At that point, that's when I grab the windlass. And I'm now spinning that windlass and going around until I see that the bright red bleeding stops. That's the indication that I've got a life-threatening bleed, is that bright red arterial blood.
Yeah.
And I want to spin that. I want to lock that windlass in. It might be 2 or 3 spins. Don't focus on the number. When I see that this wound is stopped bleeding.
The reaction of the blood. That's,
right,
yeah.
yes. I'm going to lock that windlass in. I'm going to take that strap and I'm going to bring it through. It doesn't need to be pretty how it's brought through. The point is, all I need to do is get that locking Velcro strap over the top right here. What that does, this is loose. If something happens and this gets caught on something, some fabric, a wall, something like that, it's not going to come loose.
Right.
If you don't get that locking strap over there, you're running the risk of this losing the pressure.
Yeah.
And we don't.
Right back to square one.
Right back to square one. Now you're lost in your time. You have to reset this up because you've bound some of the material together. Once you put a tourniquet on, it doesn't come back off. So on that standard, once it's on there, it's on there.
Right.
So
right.
Some of the other points with that, once it's on, leave it on. Tourniquets, it's just a reality. They're going to hurt.
Right.
There's going to be pain involved with it. Leave it on. It's saving your life. It's better that you hurt from the application of the tourniquet than you die from the loss of blood.
I'd rather be hurt than dead.
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
So that's on our arm. So if we're talking about lower extremity, we're just doing the exact same thing. We're feeding our leg through it. We're getting it as high above that injury as possible and just doing the exact same thing we did before with the arm, just on a lower thing. Okay.
Yep.
So then on a serious note, if I have a bad head injury and I'm spraying blood out of my head, is it a good idea to put it on the neck for that or no?
Nope.
No? Okay.
Nope.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So we talk about different areas when we talk about bleeding control. Tourniquets are not something we use for the head or the neck.
Right.
Obviously we have an airway that we need to protect.
Right.
So with bleeding, pressure is also a big thing that helps stop bleeding. You get a little paper cut, you pinch your fingers together for a couple minutes, it's going to clot that blood. It's just that application on a larger scale.
Right.
So if it's a neck injury, we're going to put some pressure without blocking the airway.
Right. Awesome.
Yep.
Cool, man. Is there any other things that you can add to this, or you think we hit all the talking points on it?
In a nutshell, that's pretty much it. I would just advocate for anybody to get into a Stop the Bleed course. Usually they're an hour to 2 hours long. It's a pretty quick course. A lot of times the courses are free. Sometimes there's a little bit of fee. And then invest in good equipment. Don't buy bad equipment off of Amazon.
Yeah.
Not knocking Amazon. It's great for a lot of stuff. There's a lot of companies out there making fraudulent products, and you don't want to bet your life on something that you were able to save $10 on.
Right.
Buy quality materials from the manufacturers or their recommended stores and things like that. You can spend $55, $60 to invest in potentially
It's a
saving
small
your
price
life.
to pay.
It
Yeah,
is.
it's a small
It
price
is.
to pay.
Your life or somebody else's.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome, cool. Dude, I really appreciate you coming in here and talking to everybody about this. This is stuff that's very, very important for everybody to know about. And again, like you said, it doesn't have anything really to do with a gunshot or a stab. This is multifaceted on saving your life to a multitude of things, from working on power tools at home, slips and falls, accidents, the whole 9 yards. But you also have to have one to be able to do that, right?
That's right.
So make sure that you have a tourniquet and that you've got it, you're training with it like he said, you know how to use it appropriately, because again, we can cause damage by using it incorrectly at the same time too. So make sure you not only have one, but you know how to use that one. Take a class, get educated on how to do that correctly. Awesome, thanks dude, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, not a problem. Absolutely.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about storage of these things and making sure that we have these where we need them at all times. One, you're probably not gonna have only one. Me personally, I like carrying one on my person. I like having a couple staged out in my home, and I carry one in my truck too. So keeping these where you're at, or always having one where you're at, is vitally important too. You may not have the time to say, oh my God, where did it go? And start hunting around for it, right? Remember, we don't have a lot of time to get these applied before maybe we pass out. So having these staged out where you need them to go is good. Also, I wouldn't really worry about if you've got a really good, high quality tourniquet, worry about staging them in inclement weather or anything like that. Yes, they can get wet. Yes, they can handle the cold. And yes, they can handle the heat. So don't worry about that. Put these things everywhere where you think you're gonna need them so that you always have one close by. Don't forget to stage these things out everywhere you can. Remember, they're a pretty small investment. So think about it. Not only are we worried about gunshot wounds and stabs on having that on our person, but also think about, is something gonna happen in our kitchen where we might need these? Can something happen in our garage, in a workshop? Am I at a place or a location in my job have me around things that could potentially cause me to need one of these? It's not just for guns and knives, this is kind of for everything, and it could save your life to make sure you've got it with you. And just like anything, like a firearm, martial arts, or getting good at anything, you've got to practice with this thing. Just simply having this around doesn't mean that you're going to be able to use it and use it correctly. So practice with it, just like anything. But one thing to think about when it comes to practice is the one that you use for practice isn't going to be the one that you're going to use to save your lives. Have them as two separate tourniquets. One as a practice tourniquet, one as the save your life, or multiples as the save your life tourniquets. Don't forget to take classes. Learn how to properly do this and all sorts of other emergency first aid techniques that could just save your lives and the lives of the people that are around you. So take an emergency first aid fundamentals class, take a stop to bleed class, and then don't let it stop there. Take things like CPR and other types of first aid classes. All right, well, we hope you enjoyed this video as much as we did making it. And I really want to make a special shout out to the special guests that we had here today. This video couldn't be possible without having them here, and I really thank you a lot. Don't forget to hit that like, share, and pull the trigger on that subscribe button, and hit the little notifications bell so that you see our videos in the future. This is Jeremy Burrs from D5 Ranges Marengo, and we'll see you later.